What's up, YouTube? So today I'm going to be doing a discussion, talk, speculation, review session on the latest chapters of Naruto. Primarily it's going to be on 660, which is the latest chapter, but I will be talking about previous chapters as well. And it's funny because I looked back and the last video I did was on 657, and apparently, long story short, finals got in the way. So I thought I had done consistent reviews since 657, but apparently I just didn't have the time. I remember reading through all these except for 660, but that's irrelevant. Let's begin. So here's the thing. I actually really like this series, and these chapters have been solid. Not perfect, but I mean, a lot of these chapters have been pretty darn good. I would rate them as like solid 8.5s out of 10. And so, to be honest, the last few chapters, 660, I wouldn't rate them the best, but I mean, the par is so high already. Like, that's still a compliment. I mean, I would rate this chapter an 8 out of 10. Still very solid chapter. Very good compared to there's compared to a lot of other manga. There's a lot of crap manga out there, so this is pretty good. This chapter, in fact, was also very good, and I've blown this horn many times already, but I feel like this series is coming to an end, and you can definitely see it in this chapter. By the way, I'm assuming you guys have read this. Spoiler alert. You can see the author's mind at work. I wish it wasn't so obvious, but you can see him thinking, okay, now Obito is the Jinchuriki for the ten-tailed Biju. How am I going to end this series? Okay, we have to take these Jinchuriki and somehow get them into the flower. How can we do this? No. Wait, let me take that back. The Biju and the tailed beast do not need to get into the flower, I believe. Or do they? The point is, you can see the author at work, and he knows that the flower has to bloom. And so he's thinking, how can I get this done? Or at least get it as close as possible to the point of almost seemingly no return. So the readers are like, oh my gosh, the villain's going to win and the good guy's going to lose. I think it's over, and then the good guy's gonna win, and then Madara's dead. I mean, it's too predictable. That's the whole thing about it. There's a lot of readers. I know one in particular, in real life, who maybe it's their kid at heart. Maybe they haven't read enough manga or books, but that sort of tale. I mean, you don't even have to read books. If you've watched enough movies, that sort of tale of good guy beats the villain, that is so predictable and overdone, that we can see it coming. I mean, all they have to do is beat this one human being. I wouldn't even consider him a human being at this point, but this one individual. They have an entire army of pretty much everyone in the Naruto universe minus a select few, versus this one man now, and his sort of inanimate object clones that he's sort of shaped into Zetsu. It's kind of sad, really. I really feel for Madara, because I know he's bad, he's corrupt, he's evil. His purpose is twisted to a point where it's so disgusting he doesn't realize it. But at the same time, I mean, Madara is this one guy. He's so strong in his cause, which his cause at the end of the day is pure. He wants everyone to be happy, but he's realized there's no real way to do that in the reality, so he's resorted to this twisted way of this flower blooming to do so. And by doing all this, it's very strange, because Madara, like, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a good guy. He's not like certain villains like you will see in Dragon Ball Z or any other movie, where they are literally evil. They're evil to the bone. They enjoy creating tragedy and death and pain among others Madara doesn't really enjoy that. Like at the end of the day, Madara, like Obito, in certain ways, they're all looking for the same sort of thing. So that is, in fact, a sort of different perspective that Naruto creates as a series as a whole. Um, Anyhow, let's focus on this chapter. Fairly straightforward. I really did like this the flashback this chapter. That was touching, and a lot of people, and believe me, a lot of times it can be done wrong, as I've experienced in the past, where they try something touching, but the whole premise is just too simple or unbelievable because it's not realistic. That's the big thing for me. I'm always looking for realism. Like, can this really occur? And that doesn't always happen. Like, I'll read certain manga and I'll be thinking, that's not realistic. This guy isn't going to break down in tears just because of this happened, or that's not really. I can't really truly be heartfelt and feel for this scene because it's not realistic and it's just not really pulling at my heartstrings. And this chapter, I could feel for it. I mean, this it's actually again very sad. I mean, this whole premise with the Jinchuriki just immediately being like isolated and treated horribly by the village. I think it's the most retarded thing ever. And initially I'm like, is that really realistic in this time and age? But looking back in our history, human beings as a species in reality, we have been pretty foolish and stupid. I mean, at the end of the day, we're pretty dumb animals that are getting slightly better with each day, but still, we're pretty dumb animals. And hold on, 等一下. Um, we're pretty dumb animals at the end of the day, so it's very very stupid. I mean, look at our past. There's been slavery in the United States, at least, maybe not in China, but or Brazil or Russia, but in China, I mean, in the U.S. there's slavery. There's a lot of foolish things in terms of equality and segregation and isolation that we did in our past that probably didn't really make sense looking back, but at the time it was the norm, so we accepted it. If we questioned it, we'd be outcast as well. And I'm thinking primarily of stuff like maybe just a few couple hundred years ago in almost any area around the world, including the U.S. We lived in small towns and villages, and stuff was indoctrinated, and anything unorthodox, no matter what it was cast aside, and you were isolated and you just shunned by the entire village, much like the Jinchuriki. And I just felt so freaking heartfelt for this old priest. I mean, I can imagine his whole life. This guy probably, he was a recluse. He couldn't do anything for fun except meditate all day. He probably didn't get married. He spent his whole life up until this dying old age with this Shukaku tailed beast who hated him, always abused him, and he's just constantly, like, he had no one to turn to. Even his own village hated him, which I thought that whole premise is stupid, but it's believable at the same time. I mean, how I'm thinking, how can the village people not realize that these Jinchuriki are still the same person they were before they were Jinchuriki? They still thought and think and spoke and were individuals all the same, except they had a tailed beast inside. But it was controlled. It's not like the tailed beast could burst out. Maybe they could at the dead of night, and that is probably where the fear originated from these village people and imprisoning their Jinchuriki. So that does sort of make sense. But it is really sad. I mean, these still are people at the end of the day. Very, very sad how it happens, but it's realistic. I mean, if anyone of you have read The Scarlet Letter, which is a novel, I think it's fiction, but I feel like it's based on realistic events. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm pretty sure. It's a huge book. I mean, if you're in high school, it's like almost I think it's like a required reading for a lot of high schools along the nation. It's basically the story about like this was like it took place like a few hundred years ago in like the old English times when everyone lived in villages in the United States, and uh, colonies were still being colonized, and essentially what was happening was this one girl, she had a husband already who went um I think he like voyaged away for like a year plus. That's kind of what happens with back in the days. You had to send like your husband away to colonize new regions, and you didn't know when they return. Maybe a year, 2, 3 years, maybe never. And so her husband was away, but she was married to him, and she had become pregnant with another person who she refused to admit who it was. But it was obvious because she was pregnant. So the entire village shunned her, and that was the whole premise of the story. She had a scarlet letter, a giant A. Was it an A or something else? I don't know. It was a giant letter on her chest. I think it was A for adulteress, that she had to wear, so she can be publicly humiliated. And she lived isolated by herself. It was a terrible tragedy, and she. I mean, spoiler alert on the story, but it was a novel, and it's just so disgusting because nowadays there's all these girls who have. I mean, they take everything for granted. They're not thankful for anything, and they sleep around like nothing else with everybody. And I mean, there's still a little bit of that vibe and that double standard, but it's gotten a lot hugely more lenient at this point that no one really cares. And then back in the day, like only a few hundred years ago, um, if that, maybe not even 100 or 200 years ago, these people were shunned from their villages. And here's the whole story in a nutshell. She was so honorable. For whatever reason, she would not disclose who it was she slept with. um, I guess because she didn't want to endanger that person who also lived in the village. It turned out, after like years of her being humiliated and her having to like live as a hermit outside of the village and come in every once in a while, turns out it was the priest who was like the like head of the village, the one that everyone worshipped and always gave good compliments to. And then like the priest lived on for like years, like living it up. But obviously this guilt ate away through him because he was a huge hypocrite. And despite his sermons being preached and acclaimed for years on end, I know it's on Naruto, but let me get to the end of this. I assure you there's a point. At the end, this priest, he ends up, the guilt after years just eats away at him, and then he eventually just like kills himself or something. But through those years, like he lived it good. I mean, like his whole village was like, wow, his sermons are getting better and better, not knowing that it was his guilt that was feeding his sermons, and he was being acclaimed by the whole village. Very sad stuff. Similar to, I mean, the whole point is that it's realistic. Like this stupid stuff can happen. And it was really heartfelt with Gaara talking to this beast and thinking, wow, this beast it's so strange, because this beast Gaara, I mean, he's also being shunned by the village, hating the beast hating him. Very horrible thing. Where did it all come from? These beasts were created by the sages six past, who was friends with the beast, and their descendants should have been friends with the beast as well. Something happened in between where they just forgot their ways and things happened. Predictions now. Obviously, I think what's going to happen, the author obviously wants to bring it full circle, pull it out as long as possible before he ends the series. So now it's the last dude. I mean, the last villain. Everyone else is dead. Obito's gone as well. So it's the last dude. By the way, I think it's really freaking weird how they just pass around this eye constantly, and then Madara just pops it in like it's a hat. It's not how it works. I mean, the eye is a very complicated thing with a lot of veins and nerves attached at the back that requires years of study as a surgeon to understand. You can't just pop it in like that. But then again, it's the magic of Naruto. Anyhow, final predictions. He's gonna pull all the beasts together. It's gonna take a few chapters. The QB nine-tailed fox demons going to do a little strategy with Gaara for them to prolong this, but it's eventually going to be pulled back in. The thing's going to bloom all the way until like probably 99% of before it's completely downloaded or whatever, and then at the very last second, I'm predicting Naruto's going to beat him, and then he's going to be like, yeah, justice, like Naruto. I mean, he is a sort of naive character, but I still support him immensely. I think it's great, and I'm really interested in seeing like how Naruto is going to fix all this, because this is Madara's way of fixing all this. Maybe, I mean, Naruto as of right now, he seems to just be like the author, making it up as he goes. How is he going to fix all this? He's stupid as heck. I don't think he will. I think if he does, it will be down to just destiny figuring it out for him, which philosophically is kind of stupid. It's like, if destiny could have done this all along, then why not do it at the start? Why let all this suffering happen? Regardless though, Naruto is there, and he's gonna, I'm really interested in seeing how he's going to fix all this suffering. I will be very angered, like many fans, if at the end of the day Naruto decides, okay, we defeated villain, I still don't know how to fix all this stuff in the real world with prejudice and racism and war and hunger and fighting and so forth, and limited resources like in the real world, which is why these problems have not been fixed in the real world. They're huge problems that probably won't be ever fixed. That is the nature of nature at its finest. Survival of the fittest, natural selection, limited resources. That's kind of how it works. Maybe I'm curious to see, but again, it's a manga, so through the magic of manga, maybe. I'm really curious. Let me know in your comments below. See you guys later. As always, like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Peace.